The day hope arrived. The stars had never seemed so close. Ambassador Mira Solon stood at the observation deck of the human delegation ship, her reflection faint against the endless dark. Beyond the reinforced glass, the galactic Concord Central Station hung like a jewel in the void, a massive ring of polished metal and glowing energy that had witnessed 10,000 years of alien history. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for generations. Now, finally, they were here. Mira adjusted the collar of her formal suit, feeling the weight of 200 billion souls pressing down on her shoulders. She was not a soldier. She was not a conqueror. She was a scientist, a diplomat, and a mother who had left her daughter behind on Earth to stand in this room and speak for every human who had ever looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. The answer, it turned out, was no. They were not alone. And today, humanity would prove they belonged among the stars. Behind her, the delegation prepared in silence. Dr. Kenji Tanaka reviewed his medical files one last time, hands steady despite the tremor Mira knew he felt inside. Dr. Amara Okafor checked her engineering schematics, her dark eyes focused and unblinking. Commander Joseph Reyes stood near the door, arms crossed, watching everything with the calm readiness of a man who had seen war and chose peace anyway. They were the best humanity had to offer, hand-picked not for their power, but for their wisdom. The door hissed open. A figure entered, tall and elegant, draped in flowing robes that shimmered like liquid starlight. The Velksari ambassador, Frenal, moved with the grace of a species that had mastered gravity itself. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture Mira had learned meant curiosity. Ambassador Solon, he said, his voice a melodic hum that the translator rendered into smooth English. The council is ready. They will see you now. Mira nodded and turned to her team. No words were needed. They had practiced this moment 1,000 times. Together, they followed Frenal through corridors lined with holographic displays showing the history of the Concord. Entire civilizations rose and fell in those images. Wars ended. Peace treaties signed. Technologies shared. It was a record of unity, of species learning to set aside fear and greed for something greater. Humanity wanted to be part of that story. The council chamber was vast, a circular room with no visible ceiling, as if it opened directly into space itself. 12 thrones ringed the center, each occupied by an elder representing one of the founding species. The Kirithan, insectoid and ancient, clicked their mandibles in rhythm. The Salyan, beings of pure crystalline thought, pulsed with soft light. The Drask, heavy and armored, watched with eyes that had seen stars born and die. And at the center, on the highest throne, sat High Chancellor Vorith of the Aelvar, a species so old that their legends spoke of shaping the first hyperspace lanes by hand. Mira stepped forward, alone, and bowed. Not too deep. Not submission. Respect. Honored elders, she began, her voice steady and clear. I stand before you on behalf of humanity. We come not as conquerors, but as students. Not as rulers, but as partners. We have much to learn, and we hope, perhaps, something to offer in return. Silence. Then Vorith leaned forward, his ancient face unreadable. Humanity is young. Your species discovered fire while ours crossed galaxies. What could you possibly offer the Concord that we have not already mastered? Mira smiled. She had expected this. Curiosity, Chancellor. We have not yet learned what is impossible. She gestured to Dr. Tanaka, who stepped forward and activated a holographic display. Images filled the air. Cellular regeneration techniques humanity had developed in the last century. Medical treatments that could repair damage the Concord had long declared untreatable. Tanaka spoke with quiet confidence, explaining how human stubbornness had refused to accept that certain diseases were incurable, and so they had simply cured them anyway. The elders murmured. Voritha's expression did not change, but Mira saw the flicker of interest in his eyes. Next came Amara, who unveiled engineering solutions to problems the Concord had abandoned. Humanity had looked at so-called impossible challenges and asked, but what if we tried this? Fusion designs. Atmospheric processors. Energy systems that bent the rules without breaking them. Commander Reyes spoke last, not of weapons, but of strategy. Humanity had survived wars, plagues, and near extinction not through strength alone, but through adaptation. Through unity born from diversity. Through the stubborn refusal to give up even when hope seemed lost. When they finished, the chamber fell silent once more. The elders conferred in languages humanity did not yet understand. Minutes stretched into eternity. Finally, Vorith spoke. The Galactic Concord welcomes humanity. You will be granted observer status. Prove yourselves worthy, and in time, you may join us as full members. Mira bowed again, deeper this time, not in submission but in gratitude. Thank you, Chancellor. We will not disappoint you. As they left the chamber, Threnal walked beside her. That was impressive, Ambassador. Your species shows great promise. Mira looked back at the council chamber, at the ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. We just want to learn. To grow. To be part of something greater. Threnal's 4 eyes blinked slowly. Then I hope the Concord is ready for what you will become. Mira did not understand the warning in his tone. Not yet. She only felt hope, burning bright and boundless, as humanity took its first true step among the stars. The price of progress. 2 centuries changed everything. Mira Solon had been dead for 140 years, but her legacy lived in every human settlement across Concord space. The observation stations humanity built. The medical clinics that saved billions of alien lives. The research outposts where human scientists worked alongside species who had forgotten what it meant to ask, why, instead of simply accepting, because. Humanity had kept its promise. They learned. They grew. They became something the galaxy had not seen in 10,000 years, a species that refused to stop evolving. Ambassador Chen Kai stood in the same council chamber where Mira had once bowed with hope. But he was not bowing now. He stood straight, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides as High Chancellor Vorith delivered the judgment that would shatter 200 years of partnership. The decision is final, Vorith said, his ancient voice heavy with what might have been regret. Humanity is hereby expelled from Concord space. You have 6 months to gather your people and depart. Any human remaining beyond that time will be considered an enemy of galactic peace. Chen's voice came out rough. What crime have we committed? No crime, said Elder Kishan of the Kirithan, mandibles clicking in agitation. But your species is a disruption. You change too quickly. You question too much. You will not accept the natural order. The natural order. Chen's laugh was bitter. You mean your order. The one where nothing changes, nothing grows, nothing challenges the way things have always been. Vorith rose from his throne, and the weight of millennia pressed down through his gaze. You do not understand, Ambassador. The Concord has survived because we learned the price of chaos. Species that evolve too quickly destroy themselves or others. We have seen it before. We will not see it again. Chen looked around the chamber at the 12 elders who had once welcomed humanity with open arms. Now those same beings watched him with something between fear and pity. We saved your worlds. We cured diseases you had given up on. We solved problems you declared unsolvable. Yes, said Elder Thos of the Solyan, their crystalline form pulsing dim light. And in doing so, you reminded us of our own stagnation. You made us uncomfortable. You made us question. That is why you must leave. This is exile for the crime of being too good at what we do. Vorith descended the steps slowly, each footfall echoing in the vast chamber. Call it what you wish. The decision stands. Humanity is too dangerous to remain. Not because of malice, but because of potential. We cannot risk what you might become. Chen stood silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but sharp as broken glass. 2 centuries ago, Ambassador Mira Solon stood where I stand now. She promised we would not disappoint you. And we didn't. We exceeded every expectation. We became exactly what we said we would be, partners, students, friends. He turned toward the door, then paused. But she also warned you. In the final transmission she sent before her death, the one you buried in your archives, she told you a darkness was coming. Something beyond your borders, beyond your understanding. She said when that day came, you would need humanity's stubbornness. Our refusal to accept the impossible. Chen looked back at the elders one last time. That day is coming, Chancellor. And when it does, remember this moment. Remember that you chose fear over friendship. Vorith said nothing. The silence was answer enough. The exodus began immediately. Across 100 worlds, humanity gathered what they could carry. Families torn from homes they had built over generations. Scientists forced to abandon decades of research. Children born among the stars who had never seen Earth, now refugees with nowhere to go. The fleet assembled at the edge of Concord space was the largest humanity had ever built. 12,000 ships, ranging from massive colony vessels to small family transports held together with hope and spare parts. 50 million souls, cast into the void because they had dared to be excellent. Chen stood on the bridge of the flagship Resilience, watching the Concord border markers fade behind them. Navigation officer Sarah Kim worked beside him, plotting courses into unmapped space. Chief engineer Marcus Webb ran simulations that all came back with the same conclusion: their supplies would not last. Not for a journey with no destination. Where do we go? Sarah asked quietly. Chen stared at the endless dark ahead. Away. Far enough that they can't reach us. Far enough to be free. The journey nearly killed them. 3 months in, the first ships began to fail. Systems broke down. Food supplies ran thin. A plague swept through the mid-fleet, killing thousands before Dr. Reyes Chen, grandson of the old commander, found a treatment. People went mad from the isolation, from the endless black, from the crushing realization that they were truly alone. But humanity did not break. They held each other. They shared what little they had. They told stories of Earth, of the blue planet so far behind them now that its light would not reach them for centuries. They remembered who they were and why they could not give up. And in the darkest hour, when hope seemed lost and the fleet was falling apart, Sarah Kim found it. Chen. Her voice cracked with exhaustion and something else. Something that sounded almost like joy. Chen, you need to see this. He crossed the bridge in 3 steps. The scanner display showed what the long-range probes had discovered: a dwarf galaxy, hidden in the void between the great spirals, invisible to standard Concord sensors because it existed in a region of space they had declared worthless and ignored for millennia. And within that dwarf galaxy, 17 systems capable of supporting life. Chen felt tears on his face and did not wipe them away. New Eden, he whispered. The fleet changed course. The journey took another year, and they lost another 10,000 souls to the void. But when the first colony ships descended toward the primary world, when the first humans stepped onto soil that had never known alien rule, the cheers echoed across every vessel. They had survived. Against all probability, against the galaxy itself, they had found home. Marcus Webb stood beside Chen as they watched the first habitat being raised. What do we do now? Chen smiled for the first time in 2 years. Now. We build. We learn. We grow. We become everything they feared we could be. And when they come looking, let them come. By then, they won't recognize what we've become. High above, the stars of New Eden burned bright, and humanity began the work of building a civilization that would one day make the Concord remember the cost of exile. Children of the Void. 300 years passed in New Eden, and humanity became something the galaxy had never imagined. Dr. Lyra Solon stood at the edge of the Fold Observatory, watching reality bend. She was the great-great-granddaughter of Mira Solon, though she had never seen Earth, never walked the Concord stations where her ancestor had once spoken with such hope. She had been born here, in the hidden galaxy, where humanity had transformed exile into evolution. Behind her, the massive ring of the Fold Drive hummed with power that would have seemed impossible to the humans who first fled into the void. Space itself twisted and folded, compressing light years into moments. What the Concord had declared theoretically possible but practically unachievable, humanity had mastered through sheer stubborn refusal to accept limits. Dr. Solon, her assistant Jean Park called from the control station. "We're receiving the scout reports from the border probes." Lyra turned away from the window. The observatory was built into the hull of Sanctuary Station, the massive orbital construct that served as humanity's heart in New Eden. 10 million people lived here, working, learning, pushing the boundaries of what they could achieve. Below, on the surface of New Terra, another billion souls built cities that rose like crystalline forests, powered by fusion cores and ambition. What did they find? Lyra asked. Jin's expression went dark. The Concord border is under attack. Multiple systems. The defensive fleets are falling. Lyra felt her chest tighten. "Show me." The holographic display materialized between them, showing real-time data transmitted across the vast distance through quantum-linked beacons humanity had seeded along their old Exodus route. They had never stopped watching. Never stopped listening. The Concord had cast them out, but humanity remembered. The images were brutal. Massive ships, organic and wrong, tearing through Concord defenses like they were made of paper. Worlds burning. Stations exploding in silent fury. The ancient species that had ruled for 10,000 years were dying, and they were dying fast. "The darkness," Lyra whispered. Mira warned them. Jean looked up at her. "What do we do?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment, thinking of her ancestor standing before the council, offering friendship and receiving exile. Thinking of the 50 million who had fled into the void, the 10,000 who had died in the darkness, the generations who had been born and raised knowing they were unwanted by the galaxy that had birthed their species. "Get me Chancellor Wei," she said finally. Minutes later, the hologram of Chancellor David Wei materialized. He was young for the position, barely 70, but his eyes held the weight of leading humanity through its greatest transformation. Behind him, through the windows of the council hall on New Terra, the twin suns of their new home burned bright. "I've seen the reports," Wei said without preamble. "The council is already in emergency session. They're going to ask us to help," Lyra said. "The Concord. When they realize they can't win, they'll remember we exist. They'll come asking for the species they exiled to save them." Wei nodded slowly. "And what do you think we should do, Doctor?" Lyra looked back at the observation window, at the folded space beyond, at the technology that would let them cross the galaxy in weeks instead of centuries. "I think we ask ourselves what kind of people we want to be. Are we the species that holds grudges? That lets billions die because their leaders were afraid? Or are we still the humans who stood in that council chamber 300 years ago and offered partnership even when it wasn't deserved? They cast us out. They did. And we survived. We thrived. We became something they could never imagine." Lyra turned back to face the Chancellor's hologram. "But if we let them die when we could save them, then we become something worse than they ever were. We become the thing they feared, a species so powerful we've forgotten compassion." Wei was silent, and Lyra could see him wrestling with the decision that would define humanity's future. Finally, he spoke. "The council is divided. Some want revenge. Some want isolation. But I think you're right." He smiled, thin and tired. "Mira would have helped them. Even after everything. So what do we do? We put it to a vote. All of New Eden. Every citizen gets a say. This is too important to decide any other way. The vote took 3 days. Across 17 star systems, humanity debated. The children of exile, weighing the sins of the past against the lives of the present. Arguments raged. Families divided. Some demanded justice for the ancestors who had died in the void. Others argued that mercy was what separated them from the darkness consuming the Concord. When the results came in, the decision was clear: 73% voted to intervene. Humanity would return to the galaxy that had cast them out. But they would return on their own terms. The fleet that emerged from folded space at the Concord border was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Sleek vessels built with technology 3 centuries beyond what the Concord possessed. Ships that could bend space, manipulate gravity, and strike with precision that made the old weapons seem like toys. At their head flew the flagship Unity, commanded by Admiral Sarah Okafor, descendant of the engineer who had helped humanity earn their place in the Concord so long ago. The transmission reached the Concord High Command within seconds. Admiral Okafor's face appeared on every screen, her voice calm and unwavering. "This is Admiral Sarah Okafor of the New Eden Defense Fleet. We have received your distress signals. Humanity is here to help." On the Concord Command Station, now battered and burning, High Chancellor Venear of the Aelvar, grandson of Vorith, stared at the screen with an expression caught between relief and shame. "You came. After everything we did, you came." "We came," Sarah said simply. "Not because you deserve it. But because people are dying, and we can stop it. That's what humans do. We don't accept the impossible, remember?" The battle for the Concord lasted 6 weeks. Humanity's fleet fought beside the species that had exiled them, using technology born from centuries of freedom to push back the darkness that threatened to consume everything. They lost ships. They lost people. But they did not lose hope. When the last enemy vessel fell, when the border was secured and the Concord worlds began to breathe again, Chancellor Venear requested a meeting. He came alone to the Unity, without guards, without ceremony. He stood before Admiral Okafor and Ambassador Chen Kai, grandson of the man who had spoken the final warning 3 centuries before, and he bowed deeply. "We were wrong," Venear said simply. "We were afraid of what you could become, so we cast you out. And you became exactly what we feared, powerful beyond measure. But you also became something we never imagined. You became better than us." Chen looked at the Chancellor with eyes that had seen too much loss. "We didn't do this for forgiveness. We did it because it was right." "I know. That's what makes it worse." Venear straightened. "The Concord owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. We ask nothing. But if you wish to return, to reclaim your place among us, the Council will welcome you with open arms." Chen was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "We have a home now. New Eden. We built it ourselves, without your permission, without your rules. We'll trade with you. We'll share knowledge. We'll help when darkness comes again." He smiled. "But we won't return to cages, even golden ones. Humanity bows to no council. Not anymore." Venear nodded slowly. "Then perhaps we can learn from that." As the human fleet prepared to fold space and return home, Lyra Solon stood at the observation deck of the Unity, watching the Concord station shrink into the distance. She thought of Mira, standing in that council chamber so long ago, full of hope and promise. She thought of Chen, warning them about the darkness. She thought of the millions who had died in exile, and the billions who had been born free. "We're not going back, are we?" Jean asked beside her. "No," Lyra said softly. "We're going forward. We always have been."